Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you here. Great to see the splendorous North Shore Mountains as a backdrop. Again, our gleaming pile of sulfur, and a beautiful November day. I really appreciate ULI's efforts here to host the city in 2050, and this series of dialogues to talk well into the future of Vancouver. We are a great city, and we don't want to give that up, and challenging the future, asking the hard questions about what comes next and how we shape that is absolutely fundamental to our opportunity to maintain what we have here and improve it. So really important to take this chance to talk about 2050, and certainly when we look at decisions that we make, I'm glad to have lots of our councillors here. We make decisions advised by our great city staff. Many times they are taking us well beyond 2050. They're decades or generations forward into the city in the built form and the planning and the changes that are crucial to shape our city. So being able to have a more open discussion about this, I look forward to after I introduce a bunch of ideas here. Obviously there are many forces that we do not control, and certainly we see as people vote south of the border today in the elections, that's a huge impact on Vancouver, on Canada. What the United States decides to do as our largest trading partner obviously affects us in ways that we can't control. We cannot control everything that affects our future, but certainly we can talk about and decide what kind of city that we want and what kind of action steps we take to get there. Speaking of elections, as Chris mentioned, for these past two elections in Vancouver, 2008, 2011, I campaigned very openly on some clear goals, and I was very thankful and humbled to receive strong mandates to lead on those goals in Vancouver. And we heard what those goals were in Chris's introduction there, building a thriving, diverse economy in Vancouver where there are opportunities for businesses to grow and succeed and for people to pursue careers, pursue their ultimate careers and make sure that they have a rewarding, fulfilling future ahead of them. We have a big goal around solving homelessness, making sure no one's forced to sleep out in the street, making sure we have affordable housing available for people in Vancouver. We have a big goal to be the greenest city in the world, and we have an opportunity to lead on that front globally. So these are our big, ambitious goals for Vancouver, but we lead from a position of strength right now, and setting ambitious goals for our future means that we take that opportunity to lead globally as a city. Our success over the past 4 years is what gives me confidence when I look at Vancouver's future. It was 2008, we were challenged on many fronts. We had the global recession creaming into us at about October, November 2008. We were 14 months out from hosting the Olympics. We had storm clouds upon us. I would say we had three councils prior to the one elected in 2008 that had taken out their mayors, three mayors that no longer served. We had a lot of instability at City Hall, which was a challenge. Certainly we had challenges with infrastructure, building this place, building the Canada Line. We saw over 100 local businesses wiped out in that process. We were grappling with enormous change, global recession, and Vancouver was vulnerable. We look at those circumstances now, they seem long ago that we've risen through a lot of that. That first year in office for me and my council, we faced a lot of other challenges, brazen gang war, we had a global pandemic, we had a month of record snowstorms, more than a month, that froze the city literally. But we came through all of that and certainly made tough decisions through that period to restore our fiscal health. We faced down severe budget pressures at City Hall for several consecutive budgets, making our City Hall operations far more efficient, keeping the tax increases among the lowest in the region. Last month, we had great news from Standard & Poor's signaling an upgrade to our credit rating and for their favorable review on the Olympic Village financial plan. That puts us on track for another upgrade in a couple of years' time, and that's full credit to the team at City Hall, led by our city manager, Penny Ballum, the team that really grappled with the finances, the expertise from the industry side, the development industry, and some people in this room who shared their advice on this, that really got us through, got us an amazing village built, and ultimately has bounced back and become one of the great neighborhoods of our city. We see now our construction sector back in gear, big time. We've had over $1 billion in building permits halfway through this year, and 40% increase over last year. So 2012 is now shaping up to be the second highest year for construction building here in the city of Vancouver, which is an enormous success as well. We see crime at record lows as well. Chief Jim Chu and the women and men at the VPD have driven down crime rates at record levels compared to cities right across North America for years now, and we're finally starting to see in our sights that goal of becoming the safest major city in Canada, and therefore all of North America. So in addition to this, economically, we're having great results. We're seeing a huge boom continue in technology jobs, in the creative and green industries, digital media, design, clean tech. We're seeing high-skill, high-value jobs being added in Vancouver, and the export potential for these jobs is enormous into the future. So after seeing 4 years of challenges and seeing Vancouver really stand out and shine on the world stage, from the Olympics right through all of the fundamentals of what makes a great city, that really puts us in great position for the challenges ahead to 2050. And there are lots of challenges ahead to 2050. There's no question about that. If you look at what the world will be on the ground, 9 billion people on the planet, about 7 of the 9 billion will live in cities. And that means over the next 40 or so years, we'll see the cities of the world double in population. It means building all of that infrastructure again over these next several decades. Vancouver will see significant growth. In Vancouver proper, probably 150,000 or so more people added into a finite amount of space, perhaps 1 million more people across our region. Very significant growth throughout the region. Most of the growth will be global, will be in the developing countries as urbanization takes hold and population growth in developing countries continues to outpace what we see anywhere here. Vancouver will still be a huge draw for people around the world, people who want outstanding quality of life. We will still be a magnet for that, there's no question. The big population growth globally means there will be relentless pressure on our resources, and unless there are massive reductions in resource consumption in the developed world, here in Vancouver we're consuming about 4 times what is sustainable. We have to bring that down to 1 planet worth of consumption. In the developing world, we have to ensure that it doesn't turn into 4 times the sustainable consumption. And when you look at waste and energy, those impacts will be dramatic unless we rein that in and we become incredibly more efficient as a society. So you take the pressure on the resources and population and you put that in a much more broader climate of climate change, then we have an incredible number of variables and challenges that are difficult to forecast at this point. It's daunting to think of that, and certainly having seen what the east coast of the United States went through in recent weeks, seeing the impact directly on the streets of New York and cities in New Jersey, it's daunting. It's hard to believe that many cities in the world could face impacts like that, but with the increased frequency of extreme weather events, that's what we're likely to see from here to 2050. And that directly impacts our quality of life. It directly impacts our economy. It's something that we have to be more and more proactive about, more aggressive in dealing with. Right now, 40% of the Arctic summer sea ice is gone. Right now, the ocean is 30% more acidic. We're seeing an atmosphere that's 4% wetter than historic, and that means massive changes and massive potential impacts to our economy. You look at those who assess risk in the world right now, our insurance companies, and how they gauge this. Munich Re, the world's largest insurer, reported in 2010 that, and I quote, globally, loss-related floods have more than tripled since 1980, and windstorm natural catastrophes have doubled. So the impact economically through the insurance industry alone, which is extremely risk averse, is dramatic. How do we plan for that in the cities? How do we plan to adapt? That's work that we're doing right now and forecasting forward so that we are resilient, so that we're prepared for tougher circumstances. And that means putting a stiff price on carbon in the future. That means dramatically reducing our impact on the planet. That means adapting as cities to ensure that all of our infrastructure can withstand enormous pressures. And in Vancouver, we do have a plan, climate change adaptation plan. A lot more work will need to be done, and a lot more as we build the city out. We will all have to integrate that approach. So I have to talk about the changes in the face of Vancouver to 2050. We will see, as we've talked about many times, an aging population. Probably not very many of us will be here in 2050. Unless we see some dramatic change in life extension technologies, in which case maybe the baby boomers will still be here and still dominating, and the rest of us Gen Xers will be waiting for our turn. We are going to see an aging population, but we will certainly see a more diverse population in Vancouver. We'll see people continue to come from all over the world. We've had big shift in my time as mayor. We've seen more than half of people here speak a first language other than English. There is no majority in Vancouver anymore, and we'll just continue to see people come from around the world to make Vancouver home and our city grow more multicultural. And I think that diversity will continue to be a great strength of ours. I think it will help us to adapt, it'll help us to embrace change, and it will help us to have a successful economy globally. So that's a great strength that I see evolving through to 2050. And we'll need those kind of strengths to deal with the challenge side of the equation. All of this is not surprising. I think we've seen lots of projecting and forecasting and futurists weighing in on where we're headed as a world. Keeping up with the pace of that change will be a challenge, though, and that is when we see direct impacts of things like climate change and extreme weather events. It's very hard to plan for that level of severity, but we have to do our utmost on that front. And cities around the world are doing this. A lot of information sharing and best practices, whether it's in New York, whether it's Toronto, whether it's Shanghai or Barcelona, we're learning from each other how we adapt to the rapid pace of change right now, because everyone's faced with those same challenges. That said, people do look to Vancouver globally. I would say we have enormous interest and questions asked of us about what we're doing in Vancouver to deal with the rate of change. We have many effective ways that we brought together the community, the business, our educational institutions to have great ideas and to shape our city. And many other cities are looking at Vancouver as an example. So there's a leadership role that comes naturally when we succeed and have a high quality of life like this. We have to be prepared to be open about that and share that information. So I want to talk about a couple of key elements of the city 38 years from now in 2050. It's hard to imagine 38 years forward. It's easier for probably most of us to remember 38 years back, and that would be 1974. How many people remember 1974? Yeah, some foggy memories in the house. In 1974, I was a 10-year-old kid here in Vancouver, and I went back and forth between my mom's place in West Van. My dad lived in an apartment in the West End. I saw the city through the eyes of a kid, but my memory of Vancouver is a dramatically different city from what it has become today. Today, we are a bustling cosmopolitan city of so many cultures and incredible difference in 38 years. And I want to give examples of that in transportation, in housing and land use, and as well in our economy. First of all, you look at transportation. Transportation in the 70s was all about the car. We've just come through doing our 2040 transportation plan. Many people in this room contributed to that work. When we look back 38 years, we were very car dependent, but 90% of mobility in Vancouver was car, and about 10% was from transit. They didn't even talk about walking and cycling at that point. And when they looked forward, cast forward far into the future from 1974, they figured we might get cars down to about 75% and 25% in transit. That'll be our long-range goal. Well, we did dramatically more than that. The people of Vancouver started making change, significant change in the 70s. People rose up in neighborhoods like Chinatown, Strathcona, and Grandview Woodlands to stop freeways coming into Vancouver and started to basically vote with their feet. People started to walk, the city started to densify, people started to embrace transit and walking and cycling much more significantly. We saw a dramatic shift to 1992. We had already smashed that long-range goal, and cars were at 75% at that point, 70% below the 75% target within literally 15, 20 years of that original plan. And from there, we've continued to progress. We look at what's changed to today. Cars are now about 56% of mobility in Vancouver. And our goal of getting below 50%, with the majority of transportation by walking, cycling, and transit, that looks very doable for 2020. So when we look forward to 2050, we think about mobility in Vancouver, it's eminently reasonable to think we could be well under the one-third in cars and two-thirds of our transportation via other means of getting around. So when you look forward in 2050, undoubtedly we will have very efficient public transit throughout our region, connecting all of the dense population centers. SkyTrain will continue to be the backbone of that system. We'll have light rail, streetcars, buses filling in all of the gaps. We'll see walking and cycling being the norm for shorter distances. Undoubtedly, cars will still be around, probably a similar number to what we have today, because we'll have a similar amount of road space. But I think we'll see cars being very clean. I think it'll be very rare to see a car that pollutes in 2050, given the way the world is going. So we'll have clean, zero-emission transportation system that will be seamless. That's at least a nice vision of what we could have by 2050. The challenge will be getting there, and we have to take action today to make that possible. We have enormous pressures on our transportation system right now across the region, and we feel that nowhere more challenging than on Broadway. The Broadway corridor is the second largest downtown business district in the province of BC and is extremely challenged by the bus service that we have right now and people not being able to get on the buses. We have pass-ups at an unacceptable level, and the investment simply has to happen to extend the SkyTrain backbone right through the Broadway corridor and to make sure that UBC has rapid transit service over time. We have to have the Broadway corridor on that rapid transit network. And that's been a priority for the region actually for decades. It has been on the books as a top priority. Unfortunately, it remains undone, and we don't have the funding model from the province of BC to actually take that next step with the Broadway line, to take the next step with rapid transit in Surrey, and to make sure that we're connecting all the dots throughout the region. So we're at a pivotal time for getting on track with transportation. We look at needing the funding program from the BC government. The mayors of the region have stood resolutely and said, we need to see that funding model come into place in the next session of the legislature in February so we can get on with building the transportation network we need for our region. And if it's not confirmed in the legislature by February 28th, then you can be guaranteed that will be an election issue in the spring election. That will set us on a course, I believe, of getting to a comprehensive, successful transportation system and a transit system that is worthy of our city and its growth, and more what you'd see in the great cities around the world. And if that means enabling road pricing, that's what we're in favor of. If that means enabling some of the carbon tax to be used, we'll support that. We need to see those tools on the table for the region to grow its transit. I'll be taking a message like that to Ottawa next week as the chair of the Big City Mayors Caucus. We need transit investment and infrastructure investment from the Government of Canada going forward. Most of those agreements are expiring, and with this next budget coming, we need them to double down and really reinvest in infrastructure and transit specifically for the cities right across Canada so we can compete with cities around the world.